idea.
We're live. The mics are hot. Oh, man. Let's get it, fellas. Let's get it. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the DNVR Nuggets podcast. Let's go.
I am also excited about this.
So you don't have a motorcycle or something you could do?
It's a little bit different on the Nuggets podcast.
Yeah, right. If you guys,
You guys make noises.
Life's a little different over here.
I tried it once on the Rockies pod. They're like, "What are you doing? We just lost."
like this is baseball.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't.
Yeah,
we don't.
sorry.
We're not
breaking
happy.
the code.
That's no fun allowed.
Yeah.
We're presented as always by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. Use promo code DNVR whenever you sign up. Gamble along with us. If I were to give you a gambling advice tip, bet on the Colorado Avalanche. 9 times out of 10,
Agreed.
You're right about it. Just take the Avs money line, and guess what? They almost always deliver. It's a very good betting strategy. I got over here somebody wearing my grandma's drapes. It's Brennan Vogt.
Damn, bro. I like this shirt too.
That was harsh.
I
It's like an average one I throw
redoubled
to-
down on the Avs with every goal that Edmonton scored in that last game. I just went back to draft quick. I was like, "Yep, that's good."
Quick
Odds are
aside
better.
here, AJ, because you saw I was sitting here. I was up here with you guys, and I'm here. Blaze has the Apple Watch, and his heart rate keeps going up. He keeps showing me. He's like, "Bro, look at this," and I'm like, "They're going to win." Like I don't have the emotional. Like if the Avs win, I'm very happy, but if they lose, I'm not that sad. You know, like I'm gonna go to bed. I'm watching it. I'm like, they're just such a better team, and if they lose this one, they'll win the next one. Everyone's like, I'm so nervous. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I'm looking up the DraftKings odds for a sweep in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Are we the Smavs?
Need an opponent first, but
Yeah, we don't even know who we're playing. And
It doesn't matter.
And that's Harrison Wynn. And then, of course, joining us as a guest today, most of you know him, but if you do not, he is our lead Colorado Avalanche writer, personality, podcast host, AJ Haefele.
Yo,
What's
up, man?
Yo.
what's happening?
Nice to see you on our show.
Are you a Ferrari kind of guy?
I am.
You're a Ferrari kind of
Team
guy.
Ferrari.
I am Team Ferrari.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. I
You're
don't know
big
why.
into F1, right?
I am.
I didn't.
Oh, that's right.
I'm not so big that I'm waking up at 5 a.m. on Sunday to watch Baku, but I will enjoy the race when I get up and do
Thoughts
time.
on the result at Monaco?
We're off the road. We got a lot.
Come on, man.
We got a lot
to talk to a Ferrari fan about Monaco. You trying to start a fist fight?
I'm very excited for this show because AJ, I think more so than anybody in our company, keeps up with everything going on, including apparently Formula One.
Yeah.
So of all sports, but in particular, I mean, I think it's fair to say the Nuggets are somewhat near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, I watch all the games.
Every single game?
outside of conflicting schedules when
Sure.
Avs and Nugs are on at the same time.
But even beyond that,
but otherwise,
like
yeah.
you're a guy that also just kind of knows things that I wouldn't. There's people that watch every game and then you throw a question to them and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You kind of know the weeds.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes
Okay.
depends on the weeds, man.
Okay, depends on the weeds. So we're going to talk about, but more than anything, I think more than anybody on earth, he really knows the Colorado Avalanche. And so we're going to start segment 1 on getting his perspective on the Nuggets, but we're then going to talk about why are the Avs in the Stanley Cup Finals? They've, for years, come up short. They've been a great team that has just been like learning lessons, going through the steps. So why did they break through this year? What was different? And then obviously at the end, what does that mean for the Denver Nuggets? Run by the same organization. What similarities are there? And there's some big takeaways we can learn and say, that's the thing they had to learn. Does Denver have to learn the same lesson to kind of get there? But first, I just kind of want to get your perspective on the Nuggets. All perspectives are welcome with the Nuggets because, to be honest, we're all guessing because half the rosters hasn't been there. Where do you think the Nuggets are in their title window and contention?
I mean, I don't think it's as clear cut as it was for the Avs, where it was like, oh, they've got the best players here, and here.
Okay.
I do think that I when you talk about the healthy version of the Nuggets, it's really easy to be encouraged. They've got 4 guys that you love in the starting lineup. Yeah, I don't know how people feel about Will Barton, but
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do.
I mean,
you know how people feel
like,
about him.
I really like Will Barton most of the time, but it's like there's your weak link, right? Like and really, like, I just, in terms of title contention, where they fit in the Western Conference picture, it's such a fluid picture.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, you're Minnesota's, Memphis, teams that you feel like are probably on the rise. You don't really know what's Golden State look like in the future. But then you have, what are the Lakers going to be? Are they a sleeping giant? Are the Suns going to be the same after what just happened to them? when you get emotionally broken like that on a national stage in front of everybody, it's one of those things that a franchise just may not recover from.
By the way, maybe also physically broken, as the story broke today, that they probably all had COVID that they lied about and played through.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that probably more tomorrow because it's an insane story.
Something that I think 5 years from now, there will be a great 30 for 30 on how COVID quietly ruined sports, and as all the leagues tried to pretend it didn't exist anymore.
Well, I mean, look, they did lose by 50, and as much as I would prefer the story to be they just choked things away, it does make a little bit more sense if half the team was actually just playing extremely ill. But nonetheless, we'll get to that again tomorrow. Okay, so go on. I
think that just in the scope of just trying to get out of the Western Conference alone, when looking at it through a comparative lens to Colorado all year, we were looking at Colorado out west, and this is the best team. It's the most talented team.
Right.
They're the favorite for a reason. There's only one or two other teams that might be able to really challenge them at their best. A 12-2 run says that those teams all never really came to fruition.
Right.
But for the Nuggets, I think it's a lot murkier.
Right.
Even when healthy, you have question marks. You're not totally. You really have no idea what the ceiling is because how many games did they get together? Like 10? Something like
it was
that?
5.
Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon have played in 5 games.
5 games together. Okay, so
they went 4-1.
5.
And the one game they lost was when Murray got hurt. Yeah.
So 5 games. So you really have no idea what the group looks like, even this dream unit, and the Avalanche were a little similar this year in that the first day of the season that they were 100% healthy was the first game of the playoffs.
Right.
And they actually got to play their lineup. It lasted 6 games before serious injuries started to really slide in. It lasted 2 games because of the Darcy Kemper stuff. But with the Nuggets, I just think that they're there. You could dream on them, but that's all it is. You're dreaming. There just isn't anything tangible to point your finger to and say, this is why I'm convinced that they're a favorite or they're a top 4 team or whatever.
To clarify, you're not necessarily saying they're not that. You're just saying we don't have the evidence for that yet.
And that's that. Sports are all about dreaming on things.
Yeah.
Every general manager in the league does it. Even when they're tanking, they're dreaming of getting the first overall pick and that guy changing their franchise. The sport, it's all we do. We dream on things. We think about what does this look like in a best case scenario.
Right.
And we just don't know what that version of the Nuggets looks like because we've not seen it.
Right.
And so I think it's hard to try and put them in a pecking order against teams that we have seen fully realized versions of. Not knowing how they stack up. But I feel like you have the 2-time MVP. Jamal Murray's pretty good. MPJ.
He's the one when we say you don't. I feel like when people are saying we don't know what this team is, we know what Jokic is.
Yeah.
I think we know what Murray is. I mean, the injury part of this is how is he going to come back or this, that. But we know what Murray is at his best. And we know what he is at the playoffs. So, we know that one. I feel like what we're really saying is we don't know what Michael Porter is.
Well, and really, you don't know what they're all like
together.
Yeah. Thrown in with Aaron Gordon and thrown in with the defensive versatility and hopefully an MPJ that has figured out some semblance of how to defend. Because great rebounder, but you needed more. Watching them against the Warriors, you could see that they couldn't get stops. Right. Their defensive strategy was, well, hopefully they'll miss and we'll get it, and then we'll go down the other end. There was not a lot of imposing of any kind of will. It was a lot of hoping and praying, and obviously that was a significantly compromised version. You're talking about guys like PJ Dozier even out. Even the depth was rocked this year. Yeah, and an important an important part of the puzzle, right? And so I just think that it's tough to really feel strongly about where they are, where they aren't, but that they're somewhere in there. If they rolled out to 62 wins next year, I don't think I would be super duper surprised.
Right.
If they rolled out to 35 wins, I would be super duper surprised.
They do have to make some moves on the margins, and I think that's part of why everything's in a holding pattern right now. I mean, Calvin Booth, Josh Kroenke, Michael Malone have all been pretty adamant about, like, hey, this is a summer of change. Like, this is a summer of us trying to make some big moves. So some of the margin stuff we can't answer right now. But if we go through the things we do know, how convinced are you that Jokic, the two-time MVP, is the cornerstone that can get it done?
I mean, I have a pulse.
I'm starting off soft here.
And I don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to get basketball fans to grind an axe with me every day on social media. So I'm on planet Earth, so he can obviously get it done. He's been unbelievable in the postseason. He only gets better every year, and in those moments, he's only ever been exceptional when pressed.
More confident each time he's tested.
And more and more comfortable in the moment, more and more comfortable being like, I guess I just got to do this now. And, he does it in such a nonchalant way that I think the very alpha male-driven NBA, he's kind of like an awkward fit because he's just like, well, I guess I'll just go and do it. And he looks goofy doing it. Yeah. And he doesn't have that personality. He doesn't, he's not like super about himself all the time. His personality is miscast in a league that's looking for a specific like lead dog kind of thing.
Great answer. You can stay on the rest of the show. That was a great answer.
Well, actually, the part I liked about it, because we've said as much in I think various different ways, but he might have put it even more succinctly, which is like, I don't have an agenda, therefore, yes, he is good. Because I really do think it comes down to that. If you don't like him, you probably have some ulterior motive that is making you say these things.
Yeah, just about every neutral observer is on board.
Exactly.
And the people that don't like him, the reason that they don't like him is because they want to be known as the guy that doesn't like him.
That might be one of the motivations.
That every single time that he does not get something done, they get to stunt on him.
Which tells you how good he is.
They get to stand up on his on his gigantic shoulders and say, look how tall I am.
Right.
And it's nonsense. Like it's nonsense.
Well, what about this part? Jamal Murray as his running mate. How convinced are you that is a championship number 2?
Less convinced, but I've always loved his attitude.
Yeah.
Coming from the hockey world of, you see guys embrace moments in certain ways. You see guys embrace challenges. And I think that he's a guy that lives for that moment. That's the guy that'll get bored on a January 10th game in Indiana.
Right.
But in the, in game 3 of a postseason series, he hasn't played very well, and he's going to relish that challenge of, all right, now I've got to get better.
Do you like that? Do you like, because this is one of the things about Jamal. He has consistently been at his best in the most important moments, but it does make it hard to extrapolate future success. Like, there's a lot of, like, are you going to get bubble Jamal when in the conference finals next year, or are you going to get some nights, not that night? I don't know. Like, do you kind of like the idea of, hey, his peak, though, is what we're looking at?
Me personally, no. It drives me crazy, man. But when you're in the moment, how do you not love when that guy's on a heater?
Yeah.
Like there are players on the Avs that when they're in those 2 good weeks where they're at their absolute best, you're just like, oh my God, this is a lot of fun. They're unbeatable. It's Andre Burakovsky.
Okay.
But I really didn't want to go there, but thank you for that.
Let's go.
Yeah.
But like when Jamal was at the absolute top of his game, you're just like, dude, the guy is unbelievable.
Did you learn a deeper appreciation for him through his absence? Because I did. I was hung up on the inconsistencies, but then with him not there, I was like, oh, you really understand the essential qualities he brings.
I would say no, because I just unfortunately so vividly remember the period right before he showed up.
Yeah.
That he was easy for me to appreciate just what he was.
Sure.
And I also never had any kind of like dreams that he was going to be a superstar, number 1, a franchise guy or whatever. So him not like climbing that mountain never bothered me.
Sure.
So I wasn't holding my own expectations against him. So I just enjoyed him for what he was, what he is. Although when he does have that game, the 2 for 11, and you're just like, stop shooting, dude.
Right.
And like, like those are frustrating games, but you live for those moments.
They happen more for guards too than they do for bigs, just by the nature of how the game works. But
for sure.
The last one, this is a big one for you. Actually, I have two more, but next one's a tough one. It's Michael Porter. How convinced are you that he is a piece of this team with Jokic as their centerpiece?
If they're going to win a championship, he has to be.
He does have to be. He pretty much has to be.
He has to be. So how convinced am I of that?
Yeah.
It depends on the day of the week, I suppose. My personal opinion is that he's soft, and I think that there's something internally missing that pushes a guy like Jamal, who even just fighting through an ankle injury, during the regular season, that he still pushes himself in such a way. And I don't know that MPJ is that guy. I'm not convinced of that. I don't think he's a guy that relishes the challenge in the same way that some of the other guys do, that the greats do. I think he just enjoys when life is good and when he's healthy and he's at his best. Obviously, I've never met him. I've spent zero time around him. Yeah. This is purely an outsider perspective.
Sure.
So I don't know, but he just does not look to me like the kind of guy that lives for the challenge. So I'm less convinced that he's part of a championship puzzle, but his just natural gifts, if it ever clicks for him,
off the charts. Yeah. This is the thing about Michael Porter's. I think that's a fair perspective. We don't know if that's true or not, but I do think it's that he has not proven it not to be true. And some of this is opportunity, right? Like he's only played X amount of games. But look, I felt that same way you're talking. I kind of felt about Jamal, and then I'm like, he's good, but he's not great. And then he went to the back against the wall in the bubble all over and over and over and over again. And I was like, wrong. He is that guy. Yeah. Now I know. And Michael Porter he's had little moments of that. I do think some of his great games have gone sort of like, they haven't happened to the degree of a Jamal Murray, and they haven't happened in the specific game that closed out of this or that, but they've happened in pivotal games like Game 4, where it's like against Portland, where if they don't win that game, they probably lose the series. And
Game 6 versus Portland.
So he's had
quarter
6 threes.
Yeah,
but it was the first quarter, right? That's the thing. Is it if it was the fourth quarter, that would almost feel more Jamal-esque, like he did this.
Sure.
In the big. So that's all I'm saying is he's had these moments, and they've contributed to winning equally, but they haven't quite been as definitive as Jokic's have been and Murray's have been. Yeah. But at the same time, if we cut Jokic's entire career down to 100 games, we'd probably also be extrapolating off of a lot less of a data set. So
we have too much time to think about MPJ while he's not playing basketball.
So true.
Yeah. But go ahead. That's the thing.
He was cooking.
No.
Go for it.
I insist.
No, go for it.
I made my point.
That's the worst.
Should we start over?
Yeah, let's just go to commercial.
Well, no, I had one last one, and that's Michael Malone. How convinced are you that he is the coach that gets them a NBA championship? You get to have whatever take you want.
I don't feel about Malone the way that I did about Bednar, where I've been one of his more vocal supporters in the media the last few years. The biggest part of that, though, is being around the team and seeing the way that the team has bought into Jared Bednar.
Yeah.
From an outside perspective, I think that Malone has that part of it.
Yeah.
But I do look at some of the in-game stuff where I wonder.
Yeah.
You do wonder, like, there were some frustrating decisions. It seems like, but every coach kind of has those crutches that he leans on in some situations. And if you change out that coach, it's going to be a different crutch that's going to annoy you.
Every coach in the NBA is incredibly stubborn.
Yeah,
every coach in the NBA is the most stubborn coach.
No, that's not true.
I think every coach in pro sports has something that is going to bother all of us, right?
Yeah, that's more what I mean. Yeah.
There's always going to be just a thing that we're just like, oh,
I mean, Dubs fans give it to Kerr every day.
Yeah.
This is what I was saying with owners, and that the Kroenkes have these things that you could look at and say, this other owner does this or that. And it's like, yes, but they also tell them who to draft and stuff with the Kroenkes.
Right.
Like, there's pros and cons of every owner. Some
and with Malone, I'm just not... I think he's done an amazing job connecting with the players. I think that they buy into him. I think that the leadership group on the Nuggets buys into him, and that has the trickle down effect of your 9th and 10th guys are going to work hard because they're going to believe into that guy, because the top guys do, because they got great under him.
Right.
And so it makes it easy to buy what he's selling when they've experienced their greatest success with him.
Right.
And so I think that it's a deep emotional thing, and that mentally it's all there. All the pieces are there for that. But is he a good enough X's and O's, adjustments, matchups, best of 7 kind of guy to get you through 4 playoff rounds?
Right.
I'm less convinced there, but I don't think it's a hard no.
Right.
I think I've talked about this a lot. I think the assistants make up a lot of what you're talking about. You can have the Malone skill set, but you need to make sure that you have very, very vocal and assistants that put their fingerprints on very specific things, whether it's an offensive, defensive masterminds here or there. I've made the reference many times, but Steve Kerr has who's his lead defensive assistant?
Well, he's had Kenny Atkinson for the last few
Well, it's
years.
Kenny Atkinson too.
And then Ron Adams, our defensive guy.
Yeah, so so you have these guys that are known for specific things, and I think I know who the Nuggets' new assistant is going to be. I'll wait for that story to drop, but I'll just say I don't think it's going to be. That's the piece that I think is missing. Less so the actual him having those traits. I think it's more this. And there was a great story on Nick Nurse when they won the title about how he's getting a lot of credit for something, but he was like, "Oh no, it's not me. Actually, that thing is all of my assistant here. He's the one that came to me with this crazy idea, and I'm just open to it." So
right.
I think those are the types of things that sometimes get swept under the rug. So in part, I think I would agree with you. Let's hit a break. On the other side, though, I want to get into the Avs. Why are they in the Stanley Cup Finals, and not just in the finals? Why did they destroy everybody en route to the finals? What has made them this great team?
Are you ready for an NBA champ to be crowned? Join the finals action.
I mean,
with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner.
Can you
of
do
the
it over?
NBA.
Could you say, "Are you ready for the NBA season
Are
to
you
be over?"
ready for the season to be? Are you ready for summer league?
Yes, let's go.
That's a hard yes.
DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can make any $5 NBA bet, get $150 in free bets instantly. If you're looking to turn a small bet into a big payday during the NBA Finals, check out DraftKings Same Game Parlays. You can do just that. Create your own parlay by combining multiple bets, like which team will win, total threes made, player props, team props. You can do anything, and you can get an even bigger payout. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DNVR. Make any $5 bet during the NBA Finals. Get $150 in free bets instantly. That's promo code DNVR only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Also, at Green Mountain Dental Group, haven't heard about these guys in a while, but they're back.
Like half our beat spends half of our off days at Green Mountain Dental getting some kind of work done.
I haven't talked about Green Mountain Dental Group in a while.
and Jesse just they were literally there on the same day a couple
Really?
weeks ago. Yeah.
Did they record a podcast there?
No, it was one was there in the morning, one was there in the afternoon.
awesome.
And then we had a game that night. It was like, what's going on, guys?
Yeah. Well, as you guys can hear, the entire DNVR group of employees gets their dental work done at Green Mountain Dental Group. We all go there. They're great people. They're really good at what they do. We've got a lot of DNVR listeners who go to Green Mountain Dental Group as well. So check them out. Green Mountain Dental Group in Lakewood. They're the best damn family-owned dentist in the metro area. They're extreme Colorado sports fans just like us. Schedule a cleaning, x-ray, and exam. You're going to receive a free Sonicare toothbrush. Schedule a cleaning, x-ray, and exam with Green Mountain Dental Group. Get a free Sonicare toothbrush today. Only 15 minutes from downtown Denver, Green Mountain Dental Group.
Alrighty, back here, segment 2. We're visited by the great AJ Haefele.
Can I clarify an MPJ comment? Because I've enjoyed reading the
MPJ hater confirmed. Is
well,
this
and apparently, but
I am too,
I would
apparently.
also like to just clarify that I am a full believer that he's going to put up perfectly acceptable counting stats and that he's going to be a really good player and blah, 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 blah. But greatness is a grind, and I don't know. That's where I'm less convinced, is that when the game comes easy to him, I think it's really fun, and I fully buy that that's going to be more often than not.
He's really good at the fun things.
Yeah, but the other things, the little things, the things that separate guys who have really good careers to guys that win championships and go into the Hall of Fame and are the best of the best and maximize their talent, that's the stuff that I'm less sold on being inside of MPJ.
I think two things on this. One is that I think it's what you're kind of stating here. There's a style of analysis where it's like you stake out a claim and that's my corner. And now it's like no matter what happens, you're like, hold on. You're obviously not doing this. This is your like, I think this is the thing. I hope I'm wrong. We all hope that this is a thing maybe he either has and we don't realize it, or he learns along the way, and that's the story. You're just framing the perspective you have in this very moment. So there's that part of it. And then the second part is, the thing is, I don't think anybody knows what they are made of until they are tested to their absolute limits. Like, this is true of almost everything. Very rarely in life do any of us get tested to our absolute limits. We're almost never in position to where we have to do that. Sports, especially a league like the NBA where, I mean, there's a billion people on earth that play basketball. Like, we're funneling through an enormous group of people to get down to the best 15, right? The best group of 15. It is so hard to win it. You are going to be tested. And that's what I think you're kind of getting at here is we know he can be great in certain moments. We've just never seen him be that level that is going to be needed and that pressured in those moments. And you're saying that from your perspective, if you were to drop him into that right now, he probably would not succeed at that. You might be wrong, but probably not.
If I had to make a bet on DraftKings about will he or won't he, it would be won't he. It would be the won't.
But this is part of what makes sports great is sometimes guys go through that, realize that, and then overcome it, and then become something else. A lot of times guys go through that, don't realize it, and they don't know why they failed. It's, well, that guy didn't do it for me. Like, it's because of this. I didn't get the chance to do it. And it's like, no, man, you have something to gain here. So we'll find out which one he is.
I have a lot of the same concerns about AJ, but do we forget about the Portland series with Michael Porter Jr. already?
We do.
I mean,
really do.
Here in the first couple games of that series, he was sunned by Norman Powell.
Right.
I mean, Norman Powell took him out of like the first couple games of that series.
Right.
Norman Powell. He's like an average
player,
defender. Like, he's a 6'4" average defender shooter. Like, he took him out of those games. MPJ bounced back, had a couple massive games in the back half of that series, and then had those 6 threes in Game 6. That was like case in point of him fighting through adversity. Now we need to see a lot more of that, and I think a lot of the deal with MPJ is we just don't know because he's been here for 4 seasons and only played in 2 of those, so we just don't know.
Right.
But that playoffs wasn't that long ago.
Right.
That showed me something.
I agree.
I do think the more he has been playing basketball in this time, the harder it is for us to zero in on. There are going to be things that there will always be room for growth, but we forget what it's like to watch him be dope, and those moments are just as loud. They are just as loud.
A take I'm going to have when we do our season preview is that this next season is the return of Murray, and I think that's going to frame it, and the 2-time MVP Yoga. I think I'm most excited for MPJ.
Nobody's under more pressure than MPJ.
But I also just think like nobody's more Yoke's more fun. But outside of him, like him and Murray and MPJ are equally as fun to me when they catch fire. And Porter almost seems to catch fire, at least in the regular season, more often.
Yeah,
and like
he doesn't miss
because he doesn't miss, and it just you feel like every shot's going in. So I'm almost I'll figure out at the end of the summer what it is. But at this very moment, I'm kind of almost more excited for Porter than I am any other player. Well, I'm also nervous, but I'm also
excited. This goes back to what I was talking about. It's easy to dream on things.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what Jamal Murray's. You have a pretty good idea of what the ceiling is. You have a pretty good idea the best of what he can give you. You know what the off days look like. Like, there's less uncertainty there. So of course I think it's natural. I think it's human nature to be more excited about the guy with more variance because you just are less comfortable with it.
Damn pragmatic AJ gets to the heart.
The last thing I would say, I have a sneaking suspicion that he has a lot more of that stuff in him than you're guessing. I think he works really hard. I think he feels the challenge. I wonder, is it going to be, like, how does that work come, right? Is it the attention to detail? Is it a whole offseason working on his footwork and his defense as opposed to just another move? But that he feels challenged and that he loves the game and that he works hard, I actually think he's got a lot of that.
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out. That's the fun part.
Tell me, how did the Avs get so good? Because if we go backwards, was it 2 or 3 seasons in a row they lost in the second round?
3.
3, but really the last 2, like the first one Is that sort of a we're on the come up?
We're happy to be here.
We're happy to be here.
They were not supposed to take San Jose to 7 games.
Okay.
They lose the controversially disallowed goal that would have tied the game. In the immediate aftermath of that disallowed goal, they give up what ended up being the game-winning goal.
Right.
And then they spend the entire the third period of that loss. It was like 19-1 in shots on goal.
But they were the young team that
And,
was, as you mentioned, happy to be here, and that season was a
very
success.
much like they emptied the emotional tank and everybody walked away happy. And then 3 years later, that loss got weaponized into the Avs can't get out of the second round.
Right.
Right. Because then you go back, and the next year, I
Is
think
the bubble.
the bubble, but still expectations were not that they were necessarily favorites, but that like, hey, second round is almost a par. What is that? Am I fair?
Well, they dominated Arizona so badly in the first round. You know, they win games 3 and 4 with back-to-back 7-1 scores.
Yeah.
Like, it was just so dominant. And then it was against Dallas, who wasn't very good that year, and ended up in the Stanley Cup Final. But
right,
like,
Dallas.
it was Dallas, and then they were down 3-1 in that series. And again, like, game 7, they have a 1-goal lead with 4 minutes left in game 7, and it doesn't last one shift. They score what could have been the series clinching goal 15 seconds later on the ensuing faceoff. They give up the game tying goal, and they lose in overtime in a game in which they were missing 7 regulars. They were on their 3rd goaltender. They were decimated by injuries.
Familiar.
Had they gotten to the next round, they would have gotten waxed by Vegas.
Okay.
And like, we don't talk about that because they didn't get to that round.
But it still counts up. It still adds up as a second round loss.
It's a second round loss.
Right.
And so now it becomes, you have 2 losses in back-to-back second rounds that happened very differently. Very different circumstances, very different teams. Team that probably didn't really belong there versus team that definitely belonged there but had so much taken away from them along the way that you're just like, come on.
Right.
And
then last year, I think my outsider perspective was they ran into a team that you think in a vacuum, people thought the Avs were title contenders, Vegas fringe contenders, this or that. And it felt like, from somebody that doesn't know hockey very well, that they kind of got bullied a little bit as the series went on and just didn't respond well.
Yep, they just got beat. Just got beat.
Probably should have won.
Got beat, got outplayed. The problem was that games 2 through 4, Vegas just dominates, and they have steal game 2.
Right.
So they have a 2-0 series lead. You feel great. This is going to be it. They're advancing, but Vegas and Colorado tied at the top of the NHL standings. They were very much neck and neck. They split 4-4 their season series. The only difference was an overtime game, so 1 point separated them. That gave the Avs home ice advantage and all that stuff.
But when you lose 4 in a row, it feels more resounding. Even though it went 6, it feels more like you lost 4 in a row than it is that you took it 6.
The real series was lost in Game 5 back in Denver, where the Avs had a 2-goal lead. They give it up on a couple of tough plays that you really would have liked to save on. And then in overtime, miss a grade A scoring chance 10 seconds into overtime, and a minute later lose the game on a slap shot that gets blocked and turns into a breakaway.
I feel like in hockey more than most sports, there is this sort of like, when you miss a good scoring opportunity,
it's devastating.
Yeah.
But almost like in this way where it's like danger. You know, like the next 2 minutes you're going to be on a sort of tilt. Like,
well, look at how the Avs won Game 3 against Edmonton. Edmonton's on the power play. They hit the post.
Right.
The puck comes out. It's a tie game. They hit the post.
Right.
The puck comes out. JT Compher wins a puck battle and scores 8 seconds after that post got to hit with what ended up being the game-winning goal.
Hockey's a lot of fun, by the way, man. I highly encourage people to get into it because it really is like a fun sport. There's a lot of action. It's just like
you don't need to know it to watch.
But honestly, you'll pick it up very, very quickly. Because I felt the same way
way
sometimes, where it's like I got to learn all this. It's actually there's like 3 things to learn, and then you're like, okay, here it is. Here's my questions though for you. The first questions. Do you feel like, I mean, Vegas I think is a tough matchup in part because they're like, I don't know, I'm making this too easy, but they're like a tough physical, almost defensive team, and the Avs are a fancy, not fancy, but they're a skill team. and I'm not saying the Avs didn't get tougher through that adversity, but is there anything to they got the better matchup so far? They were always great, but this is the one where they got the matchups that kind of are easiest for them.
This year?
Yes.
No. They played 3 really, really different teams, and they smoked all 3. There were caveats along the way. There were injuries. There were there were things that contributed to that. But the loss to Vegas last year was as much of a style loss as anything else, because Colorado was uncomfortable. They did not have the defensemen to handle the way that Vegas forechecked, and it wasn't a systems thing so much as it was a personnel thing, and that's why the personnel changed drastically on that back
So
end.
they did make some moves between
They
last
made
year.
a lot of
This
moves.
year is meaningfully different. What were those moves?
Well, so last year they roll with Ryan Graves and Patrick Nemeth and Connor Timmins are 3 guys on their defense in that Vegas series, and Devon Taves and Cale Makar, their top pairing. Sam Girard was also in that series last year, and everybody crushed Sam Girard because expectations for him are really high. He's small. He committed the mortal sin of never growing enough to satisfy some certain hockey fans.
Okay.
So small defensemen that move pucks well are always going to rub some people the wrong way.
Okay.
But
Itis everywhere.
it's I tell you, being a short dude sucks. But Girard got the lion's share of the blame because he needed to be a puck mover, and he was being asked to do all of it. It's
What would you say, though, of those guys, Timmins, Girard, these guys that they swapped out? Like, what was the identity of them, and what did they replace it with?
so what they did is they went from those guys and they just got more puck moving. They got Bowen Byram and Eric Johnson, who were both on last year's team, but both were hurt. And so they put those guys into this year's lineup. Those are, Eric Johnson, he's a good all-around player. He does a little bit of everything well at this stage of his career. Bowen Byram is a tip-top blue-chip prospect. He's going to be an absolute star. Maybe not quite Cale Makar level generational talent, but if Bowen Byram's not a top 15 defenseman in the next 5 years, I'll be shocked. And he's an excellent puck mover and a great skater. And you're talking the one common thread between Timmins, Nemeth, and Ryan Graves: bad skaters. All of them have heavy boots, and you just don't exit your zone when you don't skate as well.
Gotcha.
And you don't have that natural puck moving acumen. So, not great passers. Timmins a really smart, instinctual player, but also still really early in his career, and so it was asking a lot of him.
To bring this back up to 10,000 feet, because I think that's where we kind of want to stay on this.
Yeah.
The Avs made a meaningful difference, meaningful change in their defense specifically, and it was a stylistic change.
It was.
We have a deficit in this one area. Let's make up for that.
And it was frustrating for them because with no Byram, no Johnson, they had 2 of their answers right there. They just didn't have access to them.
Right.
So some of that was just tough luck. But in their bottom 6 forward core, they also made meaningful change in that instead of going for the skill guys, they had the Tyson Jost, the Jonas Donskois, guys who could make a really nice skill play, but were less comfortable as attackers on a forecheck and puck retrievals along the boards. Again, stylistically, they just made themselves more well-rounded. They didn't go get better players. They went and got different players.
So what's interesting about this is the facsimile for the Nuggets for this example would probably be length. And one of those is you are going to get longer with MPJ and Murray just because Murray's 6'5" and he's the 1, and MPJ is 6'10", 6'11". So, like, those 2 guys. But then it's also now can you go sideways, meaning those are improvements from guys coming back. And maybe even more so than just Byram and Johnson. Like, those guys are even bigger interest, but if we just talk about the length. But then can we go sideways with some of the other pieces, a la maybe Amante, as good as he is? Can you go sideways to somebody that's less good at certain things but equally as good overall? Mm-hmm. You're just reallocating those talents.
Yeah, and it was really just it wasn't about trying to go and find guys that fit this or that. It was, we're deficient in this particular area. So they went and they got guys that, if you look at what they did at the deadline, one of the most active teams at the deadline, really, really aggressively went and filled gaps on their team. They got a guy in Josh Manson on defense that's physical and mean, but has some puck skill. He can still play the way that you want to play, but he adds elements that you didn't have before. They go and get Arturi Lehkonen, who's been exceptional. Just scored the game-winning goal to send them to the Cup Final the other day.
How did he do that? That play was insane.
It was insane.
I don't watch hockey, but the way he brought that down and scored was
where
insane.
he just tipped it and then went and got the rebound.
He just caught a slap shot in midair, brought it back down. It happens.
It was fine
For us casuals, AJ,
Yeah,
that was a big deal.
really-
Okay?
For me, I watched that play and I'm wondering what the hell is Duncan Keith doing?
All right, fair enough.
He's literally just watching Arturi Lehkonen do this to his goaltender. And so that's what I'm watching that and I'm like, you made $6 million to do that? Are you kidding me? But no, Lehkonen is great, and 2 years in a row, he has overtime goals sent his team to the Cup Final.
That is a sweet
Great name, too.
The third guy in NHL history to do it for two different teams in 2 different years. So
Was it an unpopular move?
it was expensive.
It was an expensive move.
To go get Arturi Lehkonen, they have to give up one of their very best, probably their best prospect
Barry?
at this point, in Justin Barron, and then they had to give up a second-round pick, and they weren't going to give up the first, but a second-round pick is still really valuable in the
How many
NHL.
rounds are there in NHL?
7.
Okay, so that's kind of like a late first would be in NBA terms.
Yeah, it's really like an early third because the Avs are the Avs,
Okay.
so that it'll
All
be
right.
at the very back half of the second.
I
But
still we'll call it the 30th pick. They gave up the 30th pick.
it is an expensive. It was a really expensive
But
price.
they didn't just sit on their hands and say, our guys will come back and we'll play better.
Right.
They got uncomfortable in
right.
terms of making some finalizing
They were
moves.
pretty healthy-ish at the time, only missing a couple of guys, and they just kept. They made 4 moves at the deadline.
Who'd Barron's equivalent be? Is it Bones? Is it Zeke?
Probably Bones.
It's Bones. He's good enough to be a Bones.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's gonna be. Justin Barron will probably be on the top pairing in Montreal in 2 or 3 years.
You use the term unpopular moves, and I actually don't remember now how much we touched on this yesterday, but Booth did say the lesson he learned from the 2 teams in the finals, the Celtics and the Warriors, is both of them were unafraid they dare to be bold and make unpopular moves, is what he said. I think the best example with Golden State, you could talk about Gary Payton, and as opposed to Avery Bradley, just sort of.
I think it's Andrew Wiggins, to be honest.
That's
I was
better.
gonna say getting rid of Iguodala
That's a better
and
one.
going
Right.
down the road
Right.
of getting Andrew Wiggins.
Andrew Wiggins
that-
was one, like, you just were like, wow, they're willing to spend whatever because they're taking on this ridiculous big contract. And then also, like, the upside downside of Andrew Wiggins is
Sure.
like 5 years for a guy that's never been good.
Yeah.
The downside was really high.
Booth has used the terms bold and unpopular. Be willing to make
Yeah.
unpopular moves. I just think that's a quote.
Yeah, and Lehkonen's a guy that does like a career high of like 30 points, which is very high in the NHL. So it was a really expensive move for a guy that you're like, is pretty limited. And he's been a great fit for them. And it was more of a testament to their scouting to go and for them to be able to find a guy that can play the style they want to play, but also his natural ability filled gaps in for them because he's an excellent puck retriever. And that's something that Colorado as a team isn't great at, is being able to dump pucks in and go get them. And a guy like Lehkonen solves that.
So it's another talent.
It's just a guy
you
that
added.
but he also has his natural skill set. He's a great skater. He's a really smart player. All of those things fit naturally into Colorado's identity as a whole. He just has one extra skill that the Avs needed.
Nice.
And that's where their focus has been the last couple of years in offseason moves is we need guys that can play the way we want to play. They need to be able to skate. They need to have a certain maturity to them. If they've got any kind of playoff experience, we will love that too. But they have to be fast. They have to be able to skate. They have to be able to play at the pace that we want to play at all game long, and then go and get complementary skills from there. But it starts with a certain identity. They've got to be able to play at a pace. They've got to be able to play because Colorado likes to wear teams down. They like to skate teams to death. And if you go and they had a couple of guys who were just not great skaters, but were solid players, and they just stick out. you're just like,
They slowed down everybody
my God,
a little bit.
What is
yeah.
this guy?
Okay.
So they had to be able to go and find skills within their identity.
That skill to me, though, the Nuggets equivalent of that to me would probably be like this unselfishness / IQ.
Yeah.
That whenever you bring in a player, you have a player on the court that can't keep the ball moving or can't fit into that, like requires a different thing, they stick out. And Torrey Craig was an example of this. Will Barton is an example of this at his worst. Like, there's guys where you're like, man, it just takes one guy to kind of make the system run slower in a way that no longer works. So I think that's probably the one I want to get to.
Really does stick out.
The one I want to get to, though, is defense is – in basketball, there's offense and defense. In hockey, I feel like there's offense, defense, and goalie, which is like this extension of defense. Because the defense for – you just mentioned Cale Makar and like the other guys, Byram and stuff, really good. The one area where I feel like the Avs didn't quite address, and I know they got a new goalie, but I don't know. Their goalies are still, correct me if I'm wrong, average, and then you lose him, and then you become significantly below average.
It's really, really, really hard to judge what Darcy Kemper has done in the postseason for them because the eye injury happened in their third game.
Gotcha.
And so he misses the rest of game 3. He misses game 4. They have like a week off. They go into the second round. Mm-hmm. He wasn't bad in the St. Louis series. He wasn't great.
Right.
He was more the victim of bad luck until the game 5 disaster where they blew the 3-0 lead at home. Until that game, nobody was talking about Darcy Kemper as good or bad.
But that's what I mean. He was average.
He had been
enough.
good enough.
Yeah.
You didn't really. He wasn't hurting you. He wasn't stealing games. He didn't need to steal games. You can't steal games when your team's ahead all the time.
The reason I'm getting to this, though, is because you just mentioned all the things the Avs do really, really well. And most of the time people will talk about hockey as in like, well, goaltending, you got to have a hot goalie at the right time or this or that.
You do.
And you do to a certain extent. Although some of this I feel is self-selecting. If you win, you tend to say that the goalie probably did something. Maybe they were hot. Maybe they just won. But here's the thing. Here's the thing I'm getting at. A lot of times it's like Denver has to become this defense. Some type of defense has to be something this or that. And I'm wondering if renting it with Frankie, who is the backup, who's also, by the way, like by my understanding, pretty mistake prone, a backup as a goalie. That's why he's a backup. You still won that because you were graded everywhere else and you had good enough in this one zone. And I'm just wondering if the equivalent for the Nuggets on this one might be a little bit of their rim protection or just their all around defense as a whole. Of maybe they don't need to be a top 5 defense, but they do need to be a top 5 defense in very specific moments. They have to have the ability to be that in short doses because they're going to be so good in all these other areas.
I would say, be good at what you're good at. And for the Nuggets to just double down on being whatever defensively you think that they excel the most at, just go and get more of that.
Yeah.
And instead of worrying about so much about what you don't have, just be really good at what you do well. Because that's what Colorado decided to do defensively. They do have a couple of guys that are like more like filling in the gaps, but they get played so little comparatively that most of the Avs' success and failure is how their best guys play the way that they want to play.
Yeah.
Because the way that the Avs are defensively, they shut you down in the neutral zone and they move the puck the other way.
Right.
And that's what they want to do. They want to get guys who are great skaters, great with their stick, great with puck skill, move and move that way. And so I would say the equivalent for the Nuggets, whatever skill you decide that is, you're talking about rim protection. That's like your last line of defense. Like you're talking about the hockey equivalent is like blocking shots, like a guy that will get a guy that'll contest a shot. But if you don't have just like a natural shot blocker, and especially,
it might literally just be length, though. To be honest with you, it might be a thing
just
where
be disruptive.
Yeah,
be better at what you're already good at, and don't fret so much about the skill set that you just don't have.
Right.
Because it's not your identity anyway. It's not what you're trying to do.
Right.
It's nice to have something like that around, but then you end up with that guy. You end up in a playoff series. You went and you got like a classic rim protector who the ball stops with offensively. He's got to go out there and do all that.
Right.
Now you just have this goofy misfit that you don't want to use very much.
I like that a lot. I like that
and,
a lot.
then you're like, okay, well now we've went and got this guy. He was great for us in the regular season, but how does he play in a best of 7 when they attack your weaknesses?
That makes me think of Gary Harris, actually, who
he
could be this stud perimeter defender for this in this particular way that Denver right now is lacking. But the closest thing they think they have to an identity is aggregate length when those guys are healthy. And Gary wasn't a particularly long defender, and in the same playoffs that he saved the day against Utah, he was unplayable against the Lakers, and he didn't really fit into
See,
any of
I
that
think
as well.
about that, but I also think about Gary Payton on the Warriors, who's just as bad of an offensive player as Gary Harris was in that series, but he can be fine on the Warriors.
Yeah.
I think like you have to have the ecosystem around him.
Sure.
And maybe they didn't have it in the bubble with that team, but maybe they do now.
But I do think there's something to what is your defensive identity, and I don't think Denver has one because I just don't think they've been good enough, and they've been hurt, so they haven't been able to cultivate it. But I do wonder if that identity should be length. When you talk about Gordon, MPJ, Jokic, Jamal, you're already almost there. So if you just have the pieces that you add around are pieces that are, even if they're not great defensively, they're just really big, that it might be one of those things where it's like, hey, even though we keep blowing by these teams, we're constantly getting hands up and on and deflected passes and this or that. And some nights you're going to give up 140 because guys will break through that, but it's exhausting to do that over and over and over again, and it might make up. So maybe that's the equivalent there. But I definitely think there's something to having the identity first and foremost, and the Nuggets probably need to cultivate that. Let's take a break, though, because we're way late on the other. But then we'll do a quick abridged final segment here when we talk about the Cronkies, who are about to win, or at least have a chance to win back-to-back championships. We'll talk about them and are they good owners, but also just like what similarities are there, kind of compare and contrast, including Jokic to Kale and McKinnon. I think will be interesting.
Guys, make sure you're drinking Breckenridge Brewery during the Avs playoff run, of course. Breck Brew, the official beer of DNVR. If you're in the area, stop by the bar. We got Breck Brew on tap, of course. We've also got Breck Brew seltzers. If you're not in the area, check out the Breck Brew beer locator. It will tell you where to get Breck Brew closest to you. And also remember to check out the Mile High City Copper Lager. It's in that Nuggets blue can with the Nuggets logo on it. You can't miss it. So keep drinking the Mile High City Copper Lager. If you're in the area, stop into an Avs watch party for one of these finals games. It's going to be wild. And, of course, we got the Breck Brew flowing as well.
Oh, man. Are they parties have been wild?
I can't even talk about how wild they are because I'm just going to undersell it every single time.
But trust me, man, things we're trying to plan for the Stanley Cup run are going to be next level.
I just shouldn't even talk about it because it's going to exceed my expectations.
That's the thing,
in
is
every aspect.
It's funny because this is how we run DNVR. Is like we already are at capacity for our parties, so there's actually no need to sell the party.
Right.
They're already as full.
We'll
as they
be
can
open,
but we are still elevating it because we want to make it even cooler. We're just like, for the people that are lucky enough to get here early enough to get in, we're going to make it like the most memorable nights of your life. Also, the Avs will probably have something to do with that, making it the most memorable nights of your life.
That helps.
All right, now we're comparing and contrasting a little bit here. Jokic, McKinnon, Makar, Murray. How do you compare and contrast those guys in terms of being the leaders of championship teams?
So McKinnon can't be the captain.
Why?
He's too much of a grind of a personality, of a human being. Too much.
I just love that so much, man.
Just like he's just like singularly focused. He's a dick all the time.
His face after winning the Western Conference.
He's got a little Kobe in him. That kind of
it's exactly what it is.
He's a great looking guy, I just have to say. Great looking guy.
He's just like that guy, but like he holds himself to such an insanely high standard, and he outworks everybody, and he does all that. You need all that, right? He's part of the leadership group. He's part of setting the tone and being accountable day in, day out. He's part of we just have to outwork everybody, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all that stuff, right? And when one of your most talented players is also that guy, it's great. But you need an adult in the room. You need Gabe Landeskog. You need somebody that is good, like can play for you, but is also kind of your emotional center. He's the guy that kind of calms everybody down when things go sideways. He's the one that can pull Nate aside when he gets a little freaky outy, and starts screaming at people during morning skate and starts throwing sticks at people. And
Does it really happen?
Yeah. I've seen him do all of these things at various times. There's some T-Mobile Arena employee in Vegas got 3 Nathan McKinnon sticks from morning skate because he chucked them all into the stands and left.
Absolutely love that.
Just lunatic.
During morning I
think he really is.
We're talking about morning skate here.
Yeah, shoot around, basically.
It's like some Kobe Bryant shit.
Just chucked all of his sticks in there, screamed at Sam Girard, and then went to the locker room.
Love it.
And then in the locker room, apologized to everybody, and then like signed that guy's the sticks for the guy when he brought him down because he was like an employee or whatever. And you're just like, all right.
That's awesome.
But no, like you need that adult in the room as well.
But it is similar to Yoke in that I don't know that he is going. I mean, I would love for him to be the all everything. I mean, he's checks off so many boxes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he is the everything leader. I think he's grown into part of the equation the same way maybe McKinnon has. But it is interesting to me. They're the two best players, right? Jokic, McKinnon. And you're kind of almost saying that he's not, even though he's the best, he's not the leader of the team.
No, when Landeskog was facing free agency last year, and it was, is he going to leave? Is he going to stay? What's going to happen here? A lot of people were just like, oh, McKinnon will get the seat and it'll be fine. And it would have been a disaster because you needed an adult in the room.
Gotcha.
And as great as Nathan McKinnon is, and he's great at what he does, but his shortcomings are significant and they're very, very obvious.
Yeah.
And
by the way, I always credit Draymond Green as being a guy there, but it really is the Green-Curry combo. Like, Draymond Green's a bit of the throw the stick into the stands guy, and it's an important. I think he's more of a leader probably than McKinnon, but nonetheless, it is the balance of the Curry-Draymond dialectic that makes them perfect.
Draymond will light a guy up, and Curry will go to him and be like, "It's okay, man."
Yeah,
yeah, and that's you need kind of that emotional center where you're like, okay, you've got your fiery personality that raises the temperature and raises everybody's level of play, expects the very best out of himself and holds everybody to that. But you also need somebody else will calm that guy down. You need somebody that guy looks to. As well, because if that guy's too emotional to be the emotional center.
Do the Avs have a Michael Porter?
Is
there like a similar, like a talented guy that you weren't unsure about and then either stayed or left,
current or past
of this build?
I don't know. I don't know where Makar fits into this.
I mean, he's the number 2. He's the Murray. I mean, I know we're forcing this, but they're the two best, very clearly.
Yeah, but emotionally, like Makar is your cold-blooded killer. He doesn't get up for anything. The most we've seen him smile all year was in the first round against Nashville when somebody tried to fight him, and he thought it was hilarious, and he was having the greatest time of his life as this like dude that nobody's ever heard of like chases him around. And you're like, what is this psycho who like scores highlight reel goals and doesn't react, and they win the series and he doesn't do anything?
It's kind of Murray in
and
a
then
way.
yeah, it's very assassin-y where you're just like, this is what you're having fun with. You're a little unhinged, my guy.
Yeah,
like you start to worry about this dude. You know, like oh my god. But he's also just unbelievably talented.
I don't know how many Michael Porters are out there. He
really
a
is
unique person,
he's
athlete,
an oddity.
package.
Yeah.
He's so freaking good. It's so funny, man. He is such a funny one here. If we step back even further here and just look at the one thing that I do think, what happened? Did you get a crazy one?
This dude. I'm good.
Comment sections. Wild right now.
The wild and out as always.
Dude.
If we zoom out real quick, I do think that the Josh Kroenke led Avs and Nuggets. I mean, he's been at the helm for 12 years roughly here. I do feel like they follow very similar scripts. They've built through the draft.
Yep.
They've had very slow builds. They've had this like trust the process sort of style to them, and they both have actually kind of been on the same timeline. The difference was the Nuggets, of course, had some injuries that have kind of taken that, but they've been on a very similar, like there's an alternate universe where Murray and Porter don't get hurt and the Nuggets are right here right now, and we're looking at both of them. Does this tell us anything that both of these teams have been on it? Is it a coincidence, or do you think it is maybe a hint at a broader plan structurally within that building?
Yeah, I think organizationally they're pretty similar in that they said we're gonna hire our people and we're gonna get out of the way and we're gonna give them what we think are the resources that they need to be successful. Just given the money that they have available to them, I think that they're cheap with their infrastructure for both organizations. They could invest a lot more heavily into some of the tertiary things around the fringes of the organizations.
What is that for the Avs? Because we know the facility. But
for the Avs, it was a skills coach that they brought on full time, and since the Avs hired him, it's made a significant difference. Their player development inside the NHL has been, I would say, among the very, very best in the league. Not necessarily developing players outside of and getting them to the NHL, but when they get to the league,
make them better
they
every
develop. There have been so many examples over the last couple of years of guys who got to Denver and had career years. And either that's a combination of both great scouting, but also great coaching. And part of that is a skills coach who is great at what he does, and was a skills coach who like consulted with multiple organizations and all that. And then the Avs are like full time.
I think when we think about this for basketball, because sometimes this can sound like a cliche, I think the reason it's not a cliche is if this is an organizational principle, the way you develop players is more of a long view development. Because I do think there are people out there, and I think the Houston Rockets under Daryl Morey were the ultimate example of this. We got a power forward who's 6'10". Let's just teach him to shoot the corner three. Is that great for his development? No, but it's great for him to do a very specific thing that like, and then because we just want to trade him. Like if we can get him to have 1 year, 40% from the 3-point line, we could trade him for another piece. Whereas I think that maybe part of what we've seen, maybe that you can correct me if I'm wrong with the Avs, but definitely I think you see this with the Nuggets, is a little bit more of a like, this might have less trade value, I have this, but we're going to develop these guys into full, a little bit more full basketball players or more generally speaking.
I mean, look at Will Barton. Like a great development example, right? Like the guy gets traded here and
second round pick,
just keeps working his way and gets a little better. Why is it purely drafting that the Nuggets have been really good at? It's not, because you draft guys, and especially as late as their draft picks have been,
you've got to draft guys who you think are going to get better,
right? And how do they get better is what I'm saying. Like both organizations have done such a good job at finding talent, but maximizing that talent and getting the most out of those guys. Because you look at a guy like Bones and you're like, look, that was a fun year, especially because you expect nothing out of a guy drafted where he was.
Right.
He was like second team all rookie or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, what's next for Bones? What's next? And I think that's where the exciting part of it is because you know that there's another level. You know that there are weaknesses to his game that they're going to work on. And the Nuggets have been great at developing guys and developing just all-around games.
Right.
As you mentioned, they're not just like teaching the guy, okay, stand here and take a corner three, and then we'll worry about the rest later. They're teaching guys how to play the game. They're teaching development all the way. And it's this guy. Cale Makar is an exceptional defensive player who just ate Connor McDavid up. I'm sorry, I just had to do it.
I've been waiting for that for the last 5
years. Is this like, is he disagreeing with like Wayne Gretzky and everybody else that came out of the woodwork to be like, Cale Makar's incredible, but he's like, actually.
Yeah,
actually,
I don't want to get into this. It
doesn't matter.
He's just wrong, and that's
we're
fine.
long already.
It's really just with the Nuggets though, like you trust, like they've got a first round pick coming up, and you just trust that whatever they do, they're going to draft a guy who's going to help them. And it's not just going to be like we'll just stash a euro and hope that something good happens,
Right.
Like there's trust there because the organization has done a good job of finding talent, finding guys that they can connect with, that they can develop and get better. And that's where the Avs in the first round are great. Like they're not very good at drafting beyond the first round. They've gotten nothing out of those guys for the most part, but they've done a good job making up for that, getting undrafted guys. With their pro scouting, they've done a great job bringing guys in from other organizations. And then all those guys get to Denver and get a little better.
Did you see Josh Kroenke's presser at all from last week? Did you have a chance to listen to
I watched some.
You got caught a little bit of it. Well, one of the things he said is that the Avs operate at a loss every year. Do you feel how do they spend on forget the behind the scenes stuff, because I think that's like institutional. I think we can just say that they don't spend behind the scenes. But in terms of the roster, is there a tax? Like how does it?
They're a cap team. It's a hard cap, so you can't spend more than that.
Okay.
The 48-point team was a cap team, so they spent at a pretty big loss that year.
Wow.
And that was a reset. Like they were moving some things. They were moving on from some things, and they were immediately after that, they were one of the cheapest rosters in the NHL for the next.
But
few
right
years.
now, in title contention, they're
maxed. They're maxed out.
They're
Yep.
maxed out.
They're maxed out. They will be maxed out for the next few years. They haven't let any of their executives get away who have been. They have one of their AGMs in particular has interviewed for multiple GM positions, and the Avs have kind of cut back on allowing him to interview because they're trying to keep him.
Do they try to keep him also by like paying him well, or they're just like, hey man, we have you? So.
I don't know the contract specifics on that one, but they let him go and interview a few times. But there were 6 GMs hired during the season this last year in the NHL. It was a weird year, and they were not keen on letting him go to like a conference rival,
a division rival.
Yeah, they were not.
Jesus,
they were not too keen on that. So they shut some of that down.
Hold on, did they come through the front door or the side door though? It's kind of important.
We'll see.
Were they more of a side door team or a front?
They've got great front door security, but that side door is
the side door.
Everyone knows. You sneak around the side.
And then my last one here. Do you feel like the Cronkies care about the Colorado Avalanche and the success of the Colorado Avalanche?
Not really. They're not really ever there. They've never really been a presence. I don't think that they don't care. I just don't think it's something that they think about. I think that they trust Joe Sakic to get the best. They hired Sakic and said, "There's your operation.
And that's
go make it successful." And he's done a great job of that. He's widely considered a top 3 GM in the NHL, and we all joke that most of the NHL GMs have his number blocked at this point because he's
too good.
He's like Danny Ainge.
He has straight up.
You're scared to make trades with him.
He has embarrassed multiple organizations in recent years by being like, "Hey, we'll give you some nice pieces for this nice player," and that nice player turned into a star player,
Do you is there anything too? I mean, Joe Sakic is on the Mount Rushmore of Colorado athletes. Do you think there's anything to like they had Patrick Waugh for a while, they have Joe Sakic, the Nuggets don't really have anybody like that. Is there anything valuable, or is it just that Sakic happens to be great?
Yeah, I just think that he gets it, there's a couple of former players in the NHL right now that are GMs that are great. Sakic and Steve Yzerman were the biggest on-ice rivals, Avs Red Wings, and now I said Sakic was 2 of the 3 best GMs in the league. Steve Yzerman's one of those other guys.
Yeah.
So I just think he just happens to be great at what he does. So, he's
but
trying
to... Is it an added boost that he's a hometown hero?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yeah, I think it really helps, but you also know that you're probably going to have to fire that guy someday. And we saw what that looked like with John Elway.
Right.
John Elway gets treated with such consternation by Broncos country these days that you're just like, do you guys forget what he did for you?
Yeah,
it is always
Pat
weird.
Riley's only come along every 100 years.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
And you hope that Joe Sakic is Pat Riley.
Can you imagine getting tired of Jokic? You know what I mean? I just can't picture 30 years from now we're like, this guy just needs to step out of the front office. He's ruining everything.
Let go, everyone.
Just let go.
Just let go.
All right, we have a super chat we have to get to that kills. You can always just actually scream at me, Kale. I give you permission. Steve says, thoughts on Kroenke's property purchase for Rams. Hate being the ugly stepchild. Also, thoughts about the Kroenkes from an Avs versus Nuggets perspective. Well, we just got the second part of that, Steve. But, we've talked a lot about the Kroenkes over the last 48 hours or whatever. The land purchase there. People have brought this up a lot, that the Nuggets and Avs are the redheaded stepchild of the empire. I honestly don't know if I'd buy into that. I really
think they are.
I really don't think they are. I think they operate all of these from a very emotionally detached way. And the Rams, they were in a moment with the move and with that the iron was hot, so to speak, in terms of making all these deals, and that's why they are doing them. They're doing them big. My whole thing is I think they approach this as a real estate investments, and I think they have a very massive real estate investment coming up that just so happens to not match up with the Avs Nuggets being great, but I just don't think they care. I think they're like, no, this is cool, and later on that's going to be cool, and it makes more sense to do that later on.
Yeah, real estate
financially.
Developers developing real estate is not the story that we want to make it to be.
Right.
It's just part of their process. It's part of who they are.
Yeah.
But you also look at they own Ball Arena. They've spent a lot of money in the last few years trying to upgrade it and keep it up because it's their investment.
Right.
It's a nice thing about it being their building is that they are invested in having it be good,
Right.
having it be nice, having people want to come to it. You know, that gigantic jumbotron that they went and got was the first of its kind in an indoor arena.
Right.
You know,
I forgot about it. Yeah.
They ripped all the seats out and they redid all of the seating, and they're doing all of the locker room. They've been like we see the bowels of the arena on a regular basis, and they've been redoing them for years,
Right.
upgrading them, and like the practice facilities are just a joke. Like for both franchises, we're both sitting here like, come on with this. But they're like, look,
But they're operating on a real estate timeline for those.
Exactly. They're like, look, those will be here when they're here.
Yeah, they're not operating on a championship contention timeline.
We don't care about that. We still get free agent. The Avalanche don't struggle to sign free agents. They don't struggle to re-sign guys. They're not like the hottest destination in the NHL, but they're not like people don't avoid the Avalanche, you know. And now with them in championship contention, it's fine. Like,
Right.
But it's not a selling point. There was literally, it was Lollipop Park was in the front of their practice facility for 5 years.
I was going to say, by the way, an Avs practice facility I feel like is harder. That's more important almost than a Nuggets one, just because a Nuggets one, it's a gym. You could find gyms. You can go to this like a hockey.
Yeah.
There's only so many arenas.
Yeah, and like it's not just as easy as like, oh, build a thing and then have it be the ice. Like,
wasn't there a story of them having to work out on half the ice one time because there was like a figure skating?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple.
Can you imagine if the Nuggets only had 3 gyms in all of Colorado?
Every Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, can you imagine if the Nuggets were working out on one half of a court for practice
First of all,
today? Because
they kind of
do already.
Manual High School has the gym or something.
You walk into Nuggets pre-draft workout, there are guys shooting on the side hoops where like they've taped off the 3-point line. You know. I mean, it's painted, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, they had an ice problem and they had to use the other ice, and there were figure skaters out there working out, and that they had to like kick them off for the Avs to be like, okay,
they're gonna win the Stanley Cup.
All right,
so,
5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. Finish up your final lap.
The chicken dance comes on, like when you're like roller skating. It's like,
this was a few years ago, but yeah, like this is the thing with their facility is that.
The DJs last song.
Yeah.
Like when the players during training camp, when the players come up to get their meals, they have to come through the kitchen of the restaurant and then walk through the restaurant.
Swipe some nachos.
And you're just like we were sitting there eating and Alex Kerfoot just like walked by one day and like sat down and like chilled with us for a few minutes.
Big pretzel and cheese.
This song goes out to Caitlin. It's her 8th birthday. Also, Avs, please stay to the side. You're crossing the line into Caitlin's birthday party.
The Colorado Avalanche.
All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. AJ, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
I'm telling you guys, nobody better in the business than AJ. Got a great team. All of our DNVR Avalanche guys are doing a great job, and I'm telling you, man. What's that?
And gal.
And gal.
And gal.
And gal. Guys and gals. Guys, I use that.
I know.
You're right. Guys and gals. You're right. You're right. You're right.
I know you mean it.
Guys and gals covering the Avalanche. We have a great team. They do a lot of great stuff. And there's, honestly, I'm telling you, it's been 20 years since the city's been this excited for the Avalanche, and if you're not on the wave, I promise you will not regret getting on the wave. Even though we're at the final stop, you won't regret getting on it. Check out everything DNVR Avalanche. Hit the like button on the way out. We'll see you guys.